In August 1962, I made a little film with 4 unknown kids in a Liverpool cellar. Soon, the Beatles had conquered much of the world. But back in the USSR, the repressive old men in the Kremlin tried to resist the Fab Four. They were defeated by their children. This is the untold story of how the Beatles helped to destroy communism.
While in the West, the Beatles stepped on all the rules. The 60s beat was echoing through all the Soviet schools.
The Beatles turned tens of millions of young people into another religion, and the understanding that we are living in a monster state and we needed an alternative.
Every Russian schoolboy wants to be a star, playing Beatles music, making a guitar.
They changed everything, and they opened the whole world. It was all brought by them, by the Beatles.
И спасибо Beatles, которые внесли свою посильную лепту в развал этой империи.
The teachers looked upon all this as if it were a sin. We were building communism, but the Beatles butted in.
They destroyed the communism. More than Gorbachev, by the way. They changed the Soviet Union.
Beatles, it was the key that opened door to the West culture. West culture produced cultural revolution destroy Soviet Union.
Even Comrade Brezhnev sadly shook his head. Each comrade's child was in a band. Yeah, yeah, virus swept the land. Yeah, yeah, virus swept the land. And things were getting out of hand.
What the first hole in the Iron Curtain, the song of Beatles.
The Beatles were always looked upon as very dangerous, bourgeois, somehow undermined in the system itself.
And what could they do? What could they say? A generation gone astray.
The Beatles. It was like a fresh air. In Russia, it was amazing power because they had this free spirit.
Слушали эту музыку и спасали, переставали быть рабами совка. Вот чего они боялись.
What could they do? What could they say? They walked away.
It was Beatles generation.
Beatles, 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 Beatles. Da!
25 years after that first film in the Liverpool Cabin Club, I began to make documentaries in the USSR. Over the years, I heard stories, incredible at first, about how the Beatles had changed the lives of millions of kids and how their music helped to destroy official culture and the communist system. In today's Moscow, the vast socialist experiment feels like a dream. But how could 4 lads from Liverpool have played a part in defeating the Cold War enemy? I knew the Beatles had never been able to play behind the Iron Curtain. A repressive and puritanical youth culture was strictly enforced by a state which feared what the Beatles might bring. But wherever I went, people insisted the Beatles had a more profound impact on rocking the Kremlin than the threat from the West of nuclear missiles or anti-communist crusading.
In the big bad West, they've had whole huge institutions which spent tens of millions of dollars for undermining the Soviet system. And I'm sure that the impact of all those stupid Cold War institutions has been much, much smaller than the impact of the Beatles.
If you look at all the factors that led to the ultimate loss of belief in the system, which was its downfall, it was held together by fear and by belief. And the Beatles played a role in, first of all, overcoming the fear and in showing that the belief was actually stupid.
Across the USSR, the Beatles virus spawned hundreds of tribute bands. Their music was my soundtrack as I went looking for the Beatles' generation to follow the story of an improbable revolution. It was never easy to be a Beatles fan in the Soviet Union. Reviled by the communist authorities as Western pollution, Beatles records were banned. Vigilantes patrolled the streets, rounding up rock and roll fans and shaving off their long hair. Police at airports kept a lookout for smuggled records.
You just bring it into the country actually, it's like contraband, you know, just you bring in this album knowing you're not supposed to bring this stuff into the country. So, and they will find it in your luggage, they will scratch it. And it was devised like 3 nails together, you know, just to scratch it, because it should be done in a proper way.
Official Soviet culture ignored the Beatles' invasion, preferring accordions and folk dancing to guitars and the Fab Four.
You know, being a young, radical man, I just hated all this because it was all totally square, totally uncool. All the singers had wrong haircuts, they were dressed like office clerks, and they sang like Brezhnev at the Communist Party Congress. Soviet culture has been totally unsexy, very rigid, too limited. There was nothing bright and free and funky and sexy and funny about it. And of course, these qualities were exactly the vitamins that our bodies needed.